backtrack a little bit further, just to mention as well as a kind of a preface that we're also in contact with Carl Munk at the moment to try to get him on the program to go further into the aspects of the code. So you guys out there who are not yet kind of following that, keep an eye on our website as a kind of a follow-up, as that will detail a little bit more about the relationship between different monuments across the world, etc. But from your point of view, Alex, what does that say about that ancient culture who created these monuments? Obviously, we are talking about a culture that must in some way have been in communication with each other. Or do you think that they worked independently, if you will, in touch with a higher, intelligence? They on some level were unaware and unconscious of what they were doing. What's your take on that, Alex?
I think it was both, and I think the further back you go in time, the more global communication there was, specifically through the use of the pyramids. And I do believe that the Egyptian authorities have an investment in their what they're selling, and so of course the Egyptologists and the Egyptian research will not ever give us a solid date for the construction of the pyramids, because a solid date can be achieved when you're trying to identify the construction, because the pyramid stones themselves are synthetic. They're not naturally sedimented limestones. They have micro bubbles in them, as well as human hairs, and a density which is definitely artificial. And so all this proves that the Sanskrit mother culture of Atlantis is the origin, the origin of the pyramids can be accounted for there, much further back. And I think as well the vertical rain weathering research done by, I can't remember his name,
John
Boston.
Anthony West and Robert Schoch?
Yes, Robert Schoch, yes, another Boston University professor. That research really confirms, too, that the pyramids are far older than the Egyptian culture itself, and that the pharaohs have inherited an earlier culture. And I believe the key underlying principle of that earlier Sanskrit culture was this three-frequency resonance and the pyramid heartbeat synchronization, which is a concept I believe I was the first person to present. I'd never heard of it anywhere. The fact of, or the idea of a global synchronization of heartbeat resonance, and the idea being that everyone in every temple, when the pyramids were functioning at full resonance, everyone in every temple site around the planet would be inundated with a low infrasound heartbeat booming that would synchronize everyone's biorhythms, and especially their heart and mind, into that resonance at 1.45 hertz. And that actually is called trithalamic entrainment. And that concept was discovered when heartbeat entrainment was used for the synchronization of the hemispheres of the brain for Alzheimer's patients in upstate New York. And that research really showed an amazing benefit at that frequency, and it showed the unification of the functioning of the core of the brain, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal. They called that the trithalamic effect, is the unification of those three around the hypothalamus into the 1.45 hertz, with synchronizing with the heartbeat itself. And so that really underlies the Native American ancient lore and other, in all indigenous cultures around the world. You hear something in relation to this idea that people who live in the indigenous lifestyle and in sacred contact and communion with the earth have the heart-mind connection is whole, and so they act as a true heart or as a one heart. Whereas those who live in dissonance with the planet and not in a sacred path or in a sacred way live with their head cut off, because their head functions as a false heart, because it's biorhythmically, it's not synchronized with the heartbeat. And so I think that concept really, I hope to present on my website and bring to the fore. And I was amazed later, I was identifying this concept because of my research into the pyramids and understanding them as a heartbeat synchronization system due to their locations and size. And I first found resonance with that concept in the works of Vladimir Maigret from Russia, in his books about Anastasia, or Anastasia, as Westerners would call her, who is the Siberian line holder of very amazing knowledge from the Vedrus culture. So she goes into great detail about how they were using the Vedic culture in ancient times, the same culture that I'm speaking of when I speak of Atlantis. Her forefathers in Russia continued the tradition that they practice of synchronizing the human heartbeat by using DNA through saliva in planting seeds. And then that DNA would act as a synchronization mechanism that would create that same heartbeat resonance in the what they call the space of love, or the forest home that they create, in the same way that I've been able to reveal the function of the Great Pyramid. So I believe that concept is something that really defines the new age and the new energies on Earth and the new awareness that's coming into humanity, which, you know, we can simply use the word telepathic to describe it, because it really circumvents and surpasses, transcends language and the use of verbal language.
So this is very interesting in terms of the potential synchronization then of both heart and mind, but also of a number of people. If we look at it from the ancient point of view, what do you think that the consequence of that would be if we think that a lot of minds and heart actually were in synchronization with each other? Do you look at that from a point of view that we function better as human beings, it has healing properties, or do you look at this from a point of view that we could access something else, or were we used by something, so to speak, our minds and our heart through these monuments? Or what is the consequence of some of this material here that you present here for us, Alex?
Well, the consequence is so profound that it really changes the nature of what the human being is. And I think really the Mayan initiation rites and the Mayan explanations very clearly tell us what the pyramids were designed to do, and they are the pyramid builders themselves. These are people who have maintained the knowledge of the pyramid builders and who are not human sacrificers, but you know, that's a whole other topic. But the whole global synchronization of heartbeats, I think that is what will happen, and the synchronization event will be the ringing of Earth's bell, which I think is the 2012 event. And we need to talk about that, I think, in a separate conversation all in itself, because it's such a complex event. But the underlying changes, I think, will be more in the high atmosphere and at these sacred sites, as well as within the human biorhythms and the human energy fields themselves, for those people who choose to be in alignment with the sacred sites. And so
sorry to cut you off, but what do you think for those who don't choose to be in alignment with that, consequences of that?
Certainly there are consequences of every choice we make. And I could go into that in detail, but I think we need to keep on track with talking about the potential for how we can activate ourselves, because I think we all really know very well what happens when we do not. And I think, the environment that cell phones create, for example, and cell phone towers create around us, promotes microbial growth and fungal growth. And it's been shown, I think, that cancer is simply a fungus, and that the acoustic environment within the human body is really the reflection of the higher awareness of a human being. For example, monks and gurus tend to be loners or be in the forest or within stone structures barefoot, because their higher self is choosing to be in a higher resonance environment.